Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're exploring the meta a little bit more now that we've got this new grief-free meta that we're all enjoying. And one of the better things that was kind of kept down a little bit by grief, because if you're trying to assemble an A plus B, it sometimes gets a bit difficult to do that when you're having two cards stripped from your hand. So we are playing some Nadu Winged Wisdom combo. Now we just got banned from Modern because it was too OP for that, which is fair enough. But Legacy is a higher power level format, so maybe it's okay in Legacy. Or maybe it's really busted and the best thing we can be doing. Let's find out. So the way this combo works is we have Nadu in play. Whenever we target our creatures, we get to take the top card of our library and put it into our hand or into play if it's a land. And then we can just kind of snowball that. So Nomads en-Kor cost 0 to activate, and we get to target all of our creatures as much as we want. So this and the Nadu basically lets us rip through our entire deck. And as we generate more mana from our lands, coming in untapped, we get to play more creatures, then we get to Nomad some more, draw some more cards, and we can do this on our opponent's turn, and it just kind of snowballs out of control. We've got Green Sun Zenith, which can find Nadu, and we've got Chord of Calling, which can find Nadu and the Nomads. We've got some other stuff to go with the Nadu as well. So we've got an Elvish Herder, we can pay green to target a creature. It doesn't really matter that we're giving them trample, it's just to target them. Pay 1, draw a card is pretty good as a rate. We've got Quirion Ranger, which we can use to bounce forest and untap creatures. This can only be used once per turn, but it's still a way to start the chain going, and that's pretty decent. Then what are we doing with all these Nadu triggers? Well, we're making loads and loads of creatures off of Springheart Nantuko. We can also put this on another creature and like copy whatever that creature is. That's not really the mode we're going for here, but it's still a thing we can do. And eventually we can just rip through our whole deck and just play Thassa's Oracle and win the game. We have an Endurance here, which we can then use to loop all of our stuff back into our deck and just go over it as many times as we need to. Because we can sack all of our lands to the Sylvan Safekeeper and then just fill our deck with lands using the Endurance, and then we can then just go through it all over again, put all the lands into play using Nadu, and keep generating loads of guys, and just make a whole lot of creatures. Usually what happens is your opponent scoots once you start doing Nadu things. We also have a Collector Ouphe as a little silver bullet to find with our tutors, because this can really shut down some powerful decks out there. And then we've got a lot of creatures because we're trying to do Chord of Calling here. So we got ourselves 4 Noble Hierarch, we got 4 Birds of Paradise, 4 Allosaurus Shepherd, and a Birchlore Ranger. So we're kind of leaning into some of the technology of elves, but not in a massive way. It's just the Birchlore Rangers here, but we can still do things with Quirion Ranger, which is just good with mana dorks in general. And we're just trying to use these creatures to ramp into our Nadu, as well as be able to do our Chords of Calling. And that's pretty much it. We're not interacting with our opponent, we're just a dedicated combo deck. In terms of our mana base, we've got 2 Dryad Arbors in there. This is a land that we can get in off of a Nadu trigger that can also be targeted and draw us more cards off Nadu triggers. Ourselves 4 Cradles because, you know, we're playing lots of creatures. It makes a lot of sense. A couple of Savannahs, some Trops, a single Forest as our only basic, and a Boseiju as like a nice little thing that we can blow stuff up with. I think it was a couple of weeks ago I played a version of this deck that was running Living Wish that really impressed me. So I'm curious to see how this Chord of Calling build stacks up in comparison, because I haven't got a chance to play the Chord of Calling build yet. Sideboard-wise, we've got a Harbinger of the Seas, which we can use to slow down some of these Landsy-style decks, or try and slow down the Eldrazi decks. But it's obviously not free in our mana base, because we have only 1 basic in there, so we have to be careful when we are using this. Now, we can also just, you know, get our mana from our creatures, even if we're just underneath the Moon effect with only 1 forest. We've got Scavenging Ooze, which I'm about to change to a Keen-Eyed Curator before we start, so let's do that. So this is a card that messes with the opponent's graveyard and can become a big threat relatively easily. We've got ourselves a bit more graveyard endurance. We've got some Force of Vigors to try and smash up some scary opponents in permanents. And because we're in blue, we can dip into some Flusterstorm action to try and help get through some of these combo matchups that are trying to go underneath what we're doing. And sometimes we will need to remove creatures, and that's what Source of Plowshares is for. And Gaddock Teeg is perfectly good against some of these Karn Forge and Beseech the Mirror combo decks. And that's pretty much it. A few of these lists have been going 5-0 lately in some leagues. We're still early doors with the new format, but this does look like a real contender, so let's find out if it is. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get Naduing. Right, we're on the play for round 1. Our hand does get us there in a roundabout fashion. I think we keep this one. We probably lead off on the Dryad Arbor, which isn't a particularly good sign of strength. But if something happens to our Dryad Arbor, then we know we need to chop and get a Dryad Arbor off of this Green Sun Zenith. I would like to use this along with our Dryad Arbor to get a Green Sun Zenith for a white source, like a Noble Hierarch, which allows us to cast the Nomads and just rip through our deck and have a jolly good time. We need to get this tap land out of the way at some point. We could just try and draw lands and just lead off on the Trop and get the other Dryad Arbor straight away. But I think it's fine just to play a Dryad Arbor and then see how things progress from that point onwards. Alright, we'll begin with the Dryad Arbor and we'll pass it over. Alright, so we're not getting waste standard on the first turn, so we will be able to deploy this Green Sun Zenith for 1. Careful study. Alright, our opponent's on something cool over there. Love this card. This is just a perfectly designed Magic the Gathering card. Don't mean to ramble, but I do think this is just peak design right here. Simple. You can see what it does. You need to be doing something with your deck to get the rate out of it. You just love it. Okay, so we're on a dredge build. We don't have main deck graveyard hate, but we can just go over the top with Nadu, because that does just beat everything when you go over the top. So let's make ourselves a Noble Hierarch, I think, here. Is it a Noble Hierarch or Birds of Paradise? Doesn't matter which one. The flying might be relevant at some point. We could get the Sylvan Safekeeper and just use that to sacrifice lands and remove bridges. I think I'm okay. Birds now. The Cabal Therapy that's sat in our opponent's graveyard could certainly take out some of what we're trying to accomplish. And given what we've got in play, I think our opponent is likely to name Nadu. Now, we do have a backup Nadu in the form of Green Sun Zenith. Ideally, we just draw a land next turn, and then we just get to go off. Right, they dredged. They did not return any creatures. So we might have a little reprieve there. There's 2 Force of Wills in the bin. I don't think we really have a chance to play through the Force of Will here. Obviously, we can Allosaurus Shepherd if we need to first. A Brainstorm. This is going to dredge quite a few cards. Oh wait, no, it's not actually. They don't even have any dredges. So this is just trying to fix their hand up a bit. Alright, Undersea Sewers. This is going to mill off one of the dredge cards. That's pretty cool. There's Stinkweed Imp. Do we draw the land? We did not draw the land. So what does that mean for us? I think that means we're just playing out some more stuff. So I think we're going to go play the Allosaurus Shepherd first, because our opponent has shown us Force of Wills in their deck. They might have days as well. And then we can play Birds of Paradise, and we can play out the Nomads en-Kor. So if they Cabal Therapy us and take our Nadu, we can then steal Green Sun Zenith next turn. A Narcomoeba. So their first creature has arrived. Not much we get to do about that. This will enable them to get the Cabal Therapy. And they have 2 Cabal Therapies and a Poxwalkers, so they can strip both the Nadu and the Green Sun Zenith. So we might need to top deck the card we're looking for. Now we do have a lot of cards that work. We can top deck more Nadus, we can top deck more Green Sun Zeniths, or we can top deck the Chord of Callings. The reason it's better to try and get the Nomads in play is because we have less things that tutor for Nomads. So by putting this into play and saying we need to draw a Nadu potentially, it's going to be a lot easier than trying to draw the Nomads, because there's less draws of the Nomads available. If we draw Cradle, we can probably start pressuring our opponent a little bit, but we only have the 1 actual elf. Alright, we're getting a Cephalid Colosseum, so we're going to be seeing a bunch of stuff here. We're going to pop out their graveyard at this point, because there's a lot going on. They found another Narcomoeba. So we are on this Satoru build. If you're unfamiliar with how this works, you play the Satoru, and then you get a draw trigger, and then you dredge some more, and then all your creatures that come in, they dredge you some more, and then you basically just dredge your whole deck. So this is quite a combo-y build of dredge. Rather than trying to just strip all our resources, they might just be able to try and win the game this turn. They're targeting themselves with the Cabal Therapy. So they've obviously got some good stuff they want to put into the graveyard. If they do not kill us this turn, then we have a good shot. There is still a Cabal Therapy sat in our opponent's graveyard though. And they have these Poxwalkers, they'll use these. They will Dread Return targeting the Satoru here. And they're going to have another Dread Return at some point. Alright, there's putting the Golgai Grave Trolls in the graveyard. But they've got another Dread Return in their deck somewhere that they can then use to bring back this Thassa's Oracle and just win on the turn. Right, so they're bringing back the Satoru. We've got 19 cards left in the library, but they should be able to rinse through all of those pretty easily here. Right, all the Poxwalkers immediately jump back again. Satoru comes in. This will give them a dredge trigger, so they'll dredge the Golgai Grave Troll, which will hit a Narcomoeba. The Narcomoeba will come in, and that will dredge them another Grave Troll. And they just have to make sure they don't accidentally deck themselves. Because the Narcomoeba and the Satoru are blue cards, they will add to the amount of pips for the Thassa's Oracle. So they'll have 4, so they can just dredge like a Thug here, then they'll be fine. There's another Dread Return there. And we got Brainstorm. So they can sack the Satoru to the Dread Return, so they don't draw the last cards in their deck. And now they're going to have 4 if they do that in terms of their devotion. Sorry, 5 if they do that with their devotions. That should be fine. Alright. Pretty good. Let's find some useful sideboard cards. Endurance, get in here. Keen-Eyed Curator, I would also like you very much. Plows are reasonable, but that's a weird axis to fight on sometimes. Flusterstorm, if we can just stop the first things our opponent does and stop them putting cards in the graveyard, that's sometimes okay as well. We do not require a Collector Ouphe, that's for sure. The Allosaurus Shepherd does have text because we've seen a bunch of counter magic from our opponent. They're unlikely to be targeting our creatures, so that makes me less inclined to play Sylvan Safekeeper. However, Sylvan Safekeeper is a thing that allows us to sacrifice a Dryad Arbor to remove bridges. So that is a thing to consider. I think, obviously, these cards are the gold standard of what we bring in, and then if we can make room for these, we will try to. So what are we looking at to remove? It's probably like just trimming some little bits here. I think I'd rather trim an Allosaurus Shepherd than a Noble Hierarch here. So that gets us these 3 pieces of Graveyard Hate to go with the other 2. And because we've got all these Green Suns and Chord of Callings, we effectively have more copies of that. Do I want some sort of plow action here or Flusterstorm? Realistically, when are we casting this Flusterstorm? We want to be racing our opponent here. So I think we're probably just going to submit with the Graveyard Hate in. Okay, I can deal with this. So this is a slightly weird situation in terms of where our mana is, because if we want to go and ramp into a turn 2 Nadu, that's going to cost us this Green Sun Zenith, which can find hate pieces, and it can also just be the green card to pitch to Endurance. So I think we're supposed to play this one a touch slower and just lead off with like the Nomads. Because again, this is the easier piece for our opponent to disrupt because we have less copies of this effect compared to the specific Nadu itself. I don't think we care about our opponent messing with our mana base, not that we can really do anything about that. So this is going to be a Savannah into Nomads and Core. So yes, we can find Graveyard Hate with the Green Sun Zenith, but just having a Nadu in play is probably going to be better for us. So I'd rather pitch the Green Sun to the Cabal Therapy targeting me. Okay. We can't do a great deal about this one. Let's see what they name. It's going to be Nadu or Endurance, I believe. They named Endurance, sure. Birds of Paradise. So if they can get any creature, they can start messing with what we're up to. Can we get this birds down? This does give our opponent perfect information of what we're doing. Tap for 1 here. We can go and fetch a Dryad Arbor at end step, and that gives us the ability to have more creatures to just Nadu. So the chance of us fizzling with our combo is virtually 0. That will get to draw 8 cards per turn. Not even per turn cycle, but per turn. That should be enough to get us where we're going. This needs to be a really big turn for our opponent. Unmask. Sure. They can take the Nadu, they can take the Zenith. Either way, we can make a Nadu next turn. Unless they're going to surgical us. They got Cabal Therapy to go with it. Sure. Goodbye, Green Sun Zenith. They're really prioritizing hitting our combo rather than getting themselves started. Right, let's crack this. It's just the Dryad Arbor here, isn't it? Is it the Dryad Arbor? Yeah, we have the Trop in hand. That's fine. We start pressuring our opponent. A Boseiju. It's not the most exciting. Our opponent probably has some basics over there. So I'm not particularly interested in Boseijuing away what our opponent's up to. Especially when we have things like Chord of Calling in our deck. I wonder if our opponent's got any counter magic over there. Just keep bashing. This is certainly not the A plan. But we've got a Delver's worth of damage in play. We could see something like Otherworldly Gaze at end of turn here. Alright, just another City Sewers to begin with. And leave it on top. A Brainstorm. Okay. Careful study. I don't believe Boseijuing our opponent's land and offering them a shuffle makes any difference here. It just gives them more mana to work with, really. Alright, so now there is a Grave Troll in their graveyard. This would be a good turn to draw any of our combo pieces. An Endurance. That's pretty good, isn't it? I guess we want to play around a Daze. Let's jam this Endurance. Shred their graveyard. That allowed us to play around double Daze by doing it before we went to attacks. Right, so there's a Delver's worth of damage and our opponent has to start from scratch again. And the next turn we have half of their life total just in the bag. Cephalid Colosseum. 3 mana. Just the Poxwalkers. This has Death Touch, which is certainly a relevant ability. It's a 3-1 though, so it will trade with the Dryad Arbor. Suppose we could have attacked with the Nomads, then redirected the damage as well. I'll keep this land in hand to give our opponent something to think about. Maybe they waste a Cabal Therapy or something on us. Another Poxwalker? It is. A Green Sun Zenith. It's going to get Nadu, see if this is good enough. Our opponent is Hellbent over there. So I think we're probably just going to lose the Birds of Paradise here. So what we do is we put all the damage that's about to hit the Nomads and it gets put into the birds instead. we get to keep our Nomads, so we have more pressure. Our opponent's graveyard is slowly filling up, but they're drawing 1 card a turn when they need to be flipping over big chunks of their library. Alright, we managed to find the way. So our opponent is on the play, which isn't ideal for us. Does this make me want to play these Flusterstorms more or less? Not an easy answer, that one. Maybe we don't need the Elvish Herder here. And then what we're trimming... I'm not convinced by the Birchlore that much. I think I'd rather have a Fluster here just to stop their initial whatevers. And then maybe if you want to do that, we could trim something else. I think the mana guys are pretty effective here. Maybe it's a Shepherd that goes. Because now we're being less defensive. And sorry, we're being less offensive. So we don't need to protect our combo. We need to stop our opponents. I'm not going to keep a hand with just an Endurance in. And no lands. So let's send this one back. This doesn't have very much going on. Gives us a lot of really good draws though. Alright, I'm going to keep this and we're going to get rid of... I think it's a Birds here. Or is it one Hierarch? It's either of these. Or is it this Shepherd? Let's get rid of the Shepherd. Let's just have lots of mana. Shoving a Colosseum. We're going to see like a Careful Study or anything. With our opponent still on a defensive line. They're good at Otherworldly Gaze whenever, because it's an instant. Is Flusterstorming and Otherworldly Gaze worth doing? If we don't draw a land and we just hold at the Flusterstorm, where are we going? That's a good question. I think we just have to pass here. I hate that. Hopefully we draw a land next turn though. Is this what we... I don't think we hit this because this is the flashback spell. I think I'd rather hit like the Careful Study. Alright, just a couple of blue cards that don't do anything. Excellent. So another Cephalid Colosseum? It is. Really need to draw a land now. Otherwise we're just in the exact same spot we were last time. So they're going to flash back this Otherworldly Gaze and we probably have to hit this. Alright, we've done enough. The fact that we didn't draw a land has really hampered us. So if we'd have just played a guy on turn 1, we could be really far ahead. Maybe I played too risk averse there. Alright, the Careful Study is pretty strong here. But it's not going to dredge them anything. So this is 2 draw triggers that are just being used to dig into their deck rather than flip their deck over. So that is a reasonable trade of that card for us. We'd love to draw some manas. Nothing else to follow up from our opponent. They don't have Threshold even if they crack this. Lines Are Diamond. Okay. Not Lines Are Diamond, Flowstrand, sorry. Very different cards. So I think we begin with a Noble Hierarch. Crack this. Probably want a Savannah off of this one. Are we playing more mana or are we playing the Nomads? I think we're playing the Nomads because that gives us much better top decks. Is worthy of a counter spell? No. So if our opponent shreds our hand, we can still just draw one of our pieces. Alright, we've got a Surveil going on. This will give them Threshold now. But they don't have a Dredger as of yet. And they still do not have a Dredger. Satoru just cast from hand. That's a little bit of an unexpected one. Maybe they're just trying to try and play out some creatures so they can start doing some Dread Return stuff. Uncertain. Well, we don't have a land for the Springheart Nantuko. So what is the play here? I think we want to get in a creature that can attack past the Satoru. So that's the Birds of Paradise. And we want to get the Noble Hierarch so we have more pump for our creature. The other option here is the Quirion Ranger, which can potentially give us +2 mana in a turn cycle. So let's see, we have 3 mana here, 4, 5 mana. If we play this, we'll have 6, so we can Chord of Calling for what we want, either of these that we play. That seems reasonable. We can attack with a 3-power guy. Would they want their Satoru to go into the graveyard? That is an interesting question. So we can attack with a 3-power guy. Our opponent did not want to block. That is not a surprise. So now let's make... I guess this time we make the Quirion Ranger. So whichever one we play first was more important, because we can play around potential days. We haven't seen the days yet, but I know some of these builds do run them. And they might vary when they're playing them if they're on the play and the draw. So we might not have seen them in the last game, but they might have them in this one. Cabal Therapy targeting us. They're going to name either Endurance or Nadu. I think they're not going to name Nadu, because if we had Nadu, we would have played it by now. Yep, so named Endurance. Yep, I think that's correct for our opponent there. They're going to crack the Cephalid Colosseum. They are cracking this. They do not have any dredges, so this is just going to be the fair way of using Cephalid Colosseum. Still pretty good, and going to stock up their graveyard, and I would be very surprised they didn't have anything here. Let's have a pop out of their graveyard. No dredges. They can cast like Cabal Therapy here if they want to. Okay, it's over to us. What have we got? Oh, that's a pretty good one, isn't it? Let's go and get the raccoon up and running. Hello, Keen-Eye Curator. If our opponent has a Force of Will, it's going to be hitting this. There it is. What are they pitching? A Narcomoeba. And I'm going to bestow this on this Nomads en-Kor. Gives us a little bit more damage. I'll return a forest to untap. Then I'll play this. We'll get a trigger. We'll pay and get another Nomads en-Kor. This attacks for 4. It's getting to the point where our opponent might have to start thinking about chump blocking. Just getting all the birds going. I do not believe our opponent's going to have any sort of sweeper effect we need to care about. We've got a lot of draws that just immediately win us the game. And we've got lots of draws that can really stop our opponent from being able to do very much. Another Fair Cephalid Colosseum. It's not really where our opponent wants to be. I don't know how many dredges they have in their deck post-sideboard like this, but it certainly doesn't feel like the Magic Gods have been kind to them in terms of the variance here. There's like a quarter of their deck in their graveyard at this point, and they haven't hit a dredger. It looks like they kept quite a defensive hand. Now, I don't know the configuration of our opponent's deck post-sideboarding. I don't know the particular approach that they're taking this matchup, but it does look like they're taking more of a defensive approach rather than trying to just combo us out. And I have no idea if that's the correct thing to do or not, because their deck's obviously very weak to graveyard hate, so they need to take a slightly defensive stance in terms of making sure they don't just get blown out if they go for it. Right, they discard some cards. I'm still not seeing any dredges. We've got Flusterstorm Champion cracked. We're going to see another Undercity Sewers. No, an Underground Sea, so we might have a spell here. A Brainstorm. Sure. Our opponent probably has a pretty good idea if they're dead or not, because they know the top 2 cards of their library at this point. No dredger for me. Yeah, our opponent's just lamenting the fact they didn't have dredges, and it's very, very fair for our opponent to be annoyed at that one, because they went through, like I said, nearly a third of their deck is in the graveyard with no dredges. And statistically speaking, that is ridiculous. They're going to have 12 dredges roughly. Alright, I'll take it though. That's the first match on the board. Let's go to round 2. Alright, this hand will combo, so I will keep it. Our opponent plays quite a wide variety of decks. A Rift Bolt. Alright, we're doing some sort of burn style strategy here. I think it's still worth playing out a Noble Hierarch here, even if it gets killed. Because that's 3 damage that we save. And we just need time to deploy our lands and spells. And you're going to bolt the bird, you're going to bolt the face. Our opponent's deck is almost certainly not going to run any land disruption. But they might run... Okay, they're going to bolt the Hierarchs. That saves us 3 damage. But they might have Price of Progress, which is quite a big draw to playing burn right now, given all these Eldrazi decks kicking around. Eidolon of the Great Revel. Sure. The Nadu Winged Wisdom, you say. I'm okay taking a little bit of damage here, because next turn we're just going to pop right off. That 3 damage we saved earlier is now damage we can spend on playing these things out. There's an argument that maybe we should have played this Verdant Catacombs and got Forest. But next turn, we have the combo. Slick Shot Show Off. Okay. Let's see how much damage we're in for this turn. Could be lethal damage. We just don't know. Just the 1. Okay, 3 cards in our opponent's hand. Play this. We'll go and get the Forest. So the order in which we play these creatures out is interesting. If we play this Nomads en-Kor out first, if they have 1 burn spell, we can just direct it to something else, and that's fine. So I think we just play this out first. Whereas if they have like a Fire Blast, and that's pretty good. Yep, we'll take some damage from this Eidolon, but then we get to do our thing. So we're drawing some cards, tagging our creatures, find another land there. How much do I want to Springheart Nantuko here, and how much do I want to get this Endurance in play? Oh, didn't mean to tag that one. Let's tag this one. Okay, so we can make an Endurance to block here. That's pretty reasonable. Right, let's go to 7 here. Get the Tropper's fine. We could play another Nadu, but that's going to take us a lot of life. I think we just pass here. And we're going to clean up and just get rid of a Birchlore Rangers. That's fine. I've got a mountain, 3 cards in hand. We have a kill spell for this Slick Shot Show Off. The Eidolon is unlikely to be able to attack here. Okay, so they've what's the word? Plotted a Slick Shot Show Off. They plotted a second Slick Shot Show Off. They go to attacks here. Unlikely into the Nadu. Okay, the end step. Let's do it all over again. It's a very unreasonable thing that you can do, to be honest. Alright, we have a lot of mana. We're just looking for things like the Chord of Calling at end step here. So this is for 2. Is that what we want it for? I think it is. Because then we go and get another Springheart Nantuko. Actually, we've got 2 in hand. We got 3 in hand or just the 2? Go and get this Springheart Nantuko. And then we can target it. We should be able to win the game on our next turn. And then we can cast. What's our blue count right now? Not enough. Is there anything we can do with this right now that's worth doing? We do want the Sylvan Safekeepers in our hand already. And we just need to go to our turn and just make all the things. And then cast this little creature. The old Thassa's Oracle. Alright, our opponent doesn't want to sit through us anymore, but we're going to basically mill our whole deck at this point. Because there's quite a few lands left that we hit. Each land that we hit just gives us 2 more draws. And we just keep going until we can put a Thassa's Oracle on the stack. And then we win. Alright, burn. What are we supposed to do about burn? We can plow their annoying little creatures. We can also plow our own creatures. This is the one situation I think where Scavenging Ooze is marginally better. I think marginal is the word though. I think the Flusterstorms are okay. We can trade them 1-for-1 with some of our opponent's scariest things. Endurance can block some of their guys, but isn't that important. Collector Ouphe can get out of here. Let's go with this Endurance. It's Birchlore Rangers and this Elvish Herder. We're probably not going to have enough time and mana to pull that stuff in. I don't mind the Sylvan Safekeeper though. Springheart is good. Gums up the ground. These are things that we can cast our creatures through even if they've got the Eidolon and we're low. So looking for a few more little cuts here and there. We do not need Allosaurus Shepherds in this matchup, so they can go. Is there something that would be better than an Allosaurus Shepherd from these cards here? Is the Herder better? That's a tough question. I think we'll take out a Shepherd and bring back in an Endurance. It's another way that we can block the Slickshot show-offs. Our opponent's on the play. That might go wrong for us. Our opener needs more land, so we're going to mulligan. Yeah, just gets us where we need to go. What goes back here is the question. I think it's the Green Sun. I like to have the ability to plow opponent's slick shots or whatever. And we don't care about our opponent's life tail. They can gain 20 life and it won't matter because we're just going to go infinite and win the game. We're going to see some sort of Goblin Guide action, or is this just going to be a Rift Bolt? It's a Rift Bolt, sure. Are we doing Noble Hierarch stuff? Maybe. It worked out pretty well for us last time. So I think it's worth doing again here. Like that 3 life we saved was a big deal. If we wait until after our opponent has got like an Eidolon down before we start playing these 1-drops, then it goes worse for us. Do we get to gain 3? It's like a reverse Blightning. Sort of. Alright, they are targeting the Hierarch. Sure. Whenever the burn player is forced to target your creatures, it feels pretty good. Because they need to have a critical mass of burn spells to actually win the game. This can be the Eidolon. Slick Shot Show Off. Sure. They're going to peck us for 1 here. I quite like this Show Off. I think it's a cool card. Had a really fun league with it a while back. So let's play out this Hierarch. And let's pass holding up the plow. So we can't take a huge amount of damage from the Slick Shot Show Off this turn. Unless they've got some weird thing that I don't know about. Maybe Apostle's Blessing. Be very surprised to see that. But it's not in the realms of impossibilities. Price of Progress, you say. Take 4 damage. Skewer the critics, targeting our Hierarch. Sure. We could have killed this in response to the things they gain less life. But I do not believe this is going to be a match about life totals. Even so, we should have hit this. So we've got Plow for the next creature. We're at healthy 14. Well, Quirion Ranger, can't really do anything with right now, but we can use this to help against Price of Progress and bouncing our lands. Barbarian Ring. Sylvan Safekeeper. So we can go 1, 2, 3. We can just make the Nadu this turn if we want to. Just get the Nadu down. We're going to see here, red, red. It's another Price of Progress. It's a Fire Blast, targeting Nadu. Let's get the Nadu trigger first. We drew another Nadu. Not the worst, but our opponent's having to use burn spells on our creatures, which is a horrible place for them to be. Our opponent hasn't shown us any like ground pounders like the Goblin Guide, so they're probably just on Slick Shots and the Eidolon. Right, the Barbarian Ring our creature. A Green Sun Zenith. That's Green Sun Zenith for a Dryad Arbor. And let's put Sylvan Safekeeper into play. So now we're perfectly fine against Price of Progress. I say perfectly fine. We have to sacrifice a decent chunk of our board. Single red mana. Where are you going to point this? Grafdigger's Cage. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. Creature cards and graveyards and libraries can't end. So this stops our Chord of Calling from doing anything. And our Green Sun Zenith. But we've got decent power in play. We don't care about Price of Progress. We can just sack a load of stuff and have a jolly sweet time with it. Alright, a Rift Bolt. If our opponent targets any of our creatures, we get the trigger and then we decide if we want to save our creature. These are not the most useful right now. Let's just send in the clowns. And just sit on this Swords to Plowshares. And we'll be A-OK, I imagine. Where would you like to point this Rift Bolt? Targeting the face. Sure. We have an emergency plow that we can fire on our own creature as well. If it comes to it. Chain Lightning. Targeting my face. I will not pay mana to send that back. Springheart Nantuko. So let's bestow this. Awkwardly, I want to bestow it on the Dryad Arbor here. Because that gives us more lands to sack the Sylvan Safekeeper. But if we want to keep the plow open, which we do, then we have to tap our Dryad Arbor. We do get a trigger off of our little Nadu first. Smash for 4 here. And we got a 2-turn clock after this. Opponent has to work their way through 8 damages. Price of Progress. Okay, let's sacrifice a land to target our Nadu and give it protection. Let's resolve this. And we'll resolve this. We will not pay the guy. We will then protect our Nadu again. We're sacrificing. We'll float a white first. And we will sacrifice this, targeting this insect token. Sacrifice this Savannah. We just want to keep our life total high here. The Nadu. And do we want to sacrifice this Dryad Arbor so we don't take any damage? I think so. If we take 0 damage. That. Do I want to do anything with this plow? I don't think so. Sylvan Safekeeper doing some absolute work there. Nomads en-Kor. Would have liked to have a white source. I could try and sacrifice a land to see if we hit a white source here. What are we doing with a single green mana though? We can do quite a lot with a single green mana in our deck, but we're kind of dead to a lot of things our opponent has next turn anyway, potentially. I think we're just fine here, right? We're going to clean up, we'll get rid of a Chord of Calling. Doesn't do anything underneath the cage. If they draw Fire Blast, we're still not dead. We take 6 and then they die. So I don't really know what they can have here. Alright, we got the match. And that's 2-0 with the deck. Let's see how round 3 fares. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think I will keep it. We get to do like Shepherd into Safekeeper, Cradle, Springheart. That's a pretty good way to start a game of Magic the Gathering. Ocelot Pride. Alright. And we're probably in the black-white fair version of this rather than the... I say fair, but you know what I mean. Do we want to be wastelandable? They're going to wasteland our Cradle if we just hang out there. I think I just want to get the forest though. Given our hand and that wasteland could take us off of some stuff. Right, let's get the Shepherd down. So next turn we can we can Cradle for... Yeah, we can Cradle and then we can Chord of Calling. So we're going to have to let our opponent get an Ocelot. But it's fine for now. We'll definitely go wider than their Ocelots. Unless something goes horribly wrong for us. Okay, that's the first step of things going horribly wrong for us, I suppose. There's a lot of pussycats. Plateau. So we're on the Mardu version. I wouldn't be surprised if something like a Galvanic Discharge over here. So I'll play out this Safekeeper. Let's Cradle. I'll tap this. It's probably better to bestow this, and we'll bestow it on the Allosaurus Shepherd, I think. This stops us from being able to Chord this turn, but it gives us a 2-2 against their 1-1 attackers. Which might slow their roll a bit more than just Chord of Calling for a bit of a nothing burger off of a thing. Okay, Ajani. They don't have another red permanent, so that's fine. What are you up to over there, opponent? Going for the attacks here. So we do get to kill one of these Ocelots. They will flip their Ajani, which can then either pump all their cats or make more cats. But we're going to make a whole lot of stuff in the very near future. Drawing a land here would be an excellent draw. We can just get our Springheart popping off. They could pump their whole team, or they could just make another cat. I think pumping the whole team is slightly better here. And then they can work towards this ultimate. Yeah. What does the ultimate do? Each opponent chooses an artifact, creature, or enchantment and a planeswalker from the land opponent control sacrifices the rest. That's pretty good against what we're doing. Yep, so I'm going to make some more cats. And that is a -4. So they can do that next turn. Right, that is among the best lands we could draw. Let's grab this, get another land. I think we do want the mana here, so we're going to get a drop. So let's do this Chord of Calling first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this gets us the Nadu. We tap this for loads of mana. And we chord for 1. We're going to get the Nomads. And then we just do our thing. So our opponent does have this Ajani, which is not nothing. But we might just be able to loop our whole deck and win the game here. So we're going to keep doing all this nonsense. Right, so now we'll cast another Springheart Nantuko. And we'll start going again. We've got quite a few clicks to go before we win this one, but we should be okay. It's working out which ones we've clicked is the problem. There we go. We haven't clicked that one yet. See why people hate this deck though. It is very time consuming to do stuff with. Have we clicked that one yet? I think we have clicked that one. Which Gaea's Cradle would like to keep? The untapped one, please. So we do need to try and win this game this turn. Because of the Ajani can just wrath our whole board. Oh, we could have tapped a Gaea's Cradle there. Not that we need the mana at this point. We have enough creatures in hand that we can definitely combo off here. Our opponent just has to sit through it while we do it. Can we cut this and get another land and speed this up a little bit? We can. Right, we'll just keep tagging our insects until our library is empty. I'm just going to cut to when we win this game for you, so you don't have to watch me click through all this a million times. Right, we now have an empty library. We just need to find the Thassa's Oracle in our hand, which is here. If this doesn't work, then we just endurance and do it all over again. Alright, so we just combo killed our opponent on turn 3 there. Yeah, deck is wild. Sideboard-wise, our opponent is playing some creatures and stuff, so maybe these flutters are going to be useful. Their mana base might be susceptible to Harbinger of the Seas, but I don't know if I care enough to try and do that. Collector Ouphe can get right out if we don't need that one. The Elvish Herder is fine, but I think we're just bringing in some better cards. And these plows to like surgically take out whatever's going to be jamming us up. Not a big fan of the Allosaurus Shepherds here, but we can go wide. Just some guys and beat down. That doesn't really feel like what we need to do here, does it? Would I like to bring one of these back in? Like a Birchlore or a Herder over on a Shepherd. I kind of want to bring in a Force of Vigor in case they have Cage. That's quite tempting. But then, if they don't, then we just got this clunky Force of Vigor kicking around. We don't really need. Maybe I'll take out one of these, just have a reasonable body that can roadblock some of their guys. None of these are randomly 1/2s, are they? No. Okay. Sure, I think that's fine. Still got a decent amount of time on our clock as well. Yeah, this hand just does the thing. So we'll keep this. We want to keep the fetch land so that we can use it with the Springheart Nantuko in play. The other option is to try and get a Dryad Arbor and then put the Springheart Nantuko on the Dryad Arbor. Thoughtseize. I'd probably take the Nomads here. But it could be the Chord. Oh wow, they took the Springheart. I guess if we're trying to have like a fair game of playing creatures, then that certainly stops us from being able to do that. Right, play a Trop, because that's when we care about getting wastelanded the least. Let's play our little Birds of Paradise. Next turn, we can play the Nomads off the Birds. The Verdant Catacombs can get us a Dryad Arbor. We can kind of continue on from there. Makes them a guy. Yep, our opponent is playing relatively fair Magic the Gathering, and we are most certainly not. Okay, so we'll get this Nomads out. We'll get this Noble out. And then we'll play this Verdant Catacombs, which can go and get us our Dryad Arbor. Next turn, we can just get Nadu and probably win the game. They do have a Caracas, but we can then respond to the Caracas with Nomads a bunch, which probably gives us enough mana. They're ploughing our Nomads. Sure. Obviously not ideal for us, but we can live with that. And there's a Wasteland. They can take out our Trop. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to take a little bit of damage here, but that's alright. Let's crack this, go and find our Dryad Arbor. Quirion Ranger. Let's deploy this. Are we attacking? We can Chord of Calling for 1. Actually, we can Chord of Calling for 2, right? Because of the Quirion Ranger. We have to bounce a forest to do that. But I can live with that. But what would we Chord of Calling for? An Amped Raptor. Okay. An Ocelot Pride. More cats. Just a 2-1. Don't care about 2-1 enough. A Keen-Eyed Curator. That's a decent sized body, isn't it? So we can play the Keen-Eyed Curator. That gives us 5. So effectively 6 mana for our Chord of Calling, which gives us Nadu if our opponent plays anything. So I will play this lovely little raccoon friend. So we've got instant, sorcery, land, creature. So I can just make this Keen-Eyed Curator a 7/7 as well. That's another thing we're allowed to do. Let's see if our opponent wants to tap out this Caracas. They're playing another Ajani. They do have a red permanent here. So they do get to put their first Ajani, and then they can do a big doming to either a creature or to our face. If they create a cat here. That'll be 5 damage. Get to see where they direct this, and then we can react in an appropriate fashion. On the Ranger. 1, 2, 3 mana, 4 mana. So we can just make the Keen-Eyed Curator bigger if we want to. And that becomes quite a sizable threat for our opponent to deal with. Or we can just make the Nadu right now. I quite like making the Nadu if I'm being honest. So tap for this, this, this. And I would like to untap this Dryad Arbor. It's Chord of Calling. Let's get the Nadu. Their Caracas is tapped. They can attack here for some damage. We will get to gobble something up. But we will take some real damage if they want to attack. Okay, so now we can kill their Ajani with the Nadu regardless of what else happens here. A Green Sun Zenith. So that can get us... Do we still have the Elvish Herder in our deck? Or did I take it out? We did take it out. This would be a situation where it's okay. We could go and get the Quirion Ranger as well. I think step 1 is probably attack the Ajani here. So we can get the Sylvan Safekeeper so our opponent can't bounce our stuff anyway. That's also fine here. Guide of Souls. Sure. Alright, Raccoon. You're going to get large here. So we'll get rid of this enchantment creature, because that gives us 2 things already. Then we'll get rid of sorcery. And we'll get rid of this instant. And now we have a 7/7 trampler. And endurance. Is that a thing we need to do anything with? So are we attacking with this Nadu for 4, or are we attacking with this massive trampler? So this will be 8. So 2, 4, 6, 8. They would have to trade all of these bodies to kill it. I don't dislike that. Just go big. Get in there, little friend. And then we're sat there with the endurance. If we need it, you can have like another blocker. You can remove some graveyard stuff if that becomes relevant. I doubt it will. Alright, so this is going to let them start doing the Ocelot Pride stuff. And they have the City's Blessing. So they're going to be making lots and lots of guys. But it doesn't take much for us to be able to pop off here. We do have 11 minutes to execute our combo if that's what this comes down to. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. So they're gaining a load of life and doing a load of nonsense over there. A Misty Rainforest. I do not hate that one. Am I flowing some mana and starting to sack some lands? I think I probably am at this stage. This is going to target itself and sacrifice this land. Let's see what this finds us. A Ranger. Okay, that's acceptable. So we can attack with this massive 8/8, or we can just try and get a little bit more work done. So let's tap this for some mana here. Let's untap this. Retain this. Birds of Paradise. It's not the one we wanted. That's green. Let's target this, sacrificing an Arbor. To give me that Springheart Nantuko. My opponent is cracking something over there. Have they got an answer for our Nadu here? That could be pretty annoying, actually. We could have avoided this by playing the Misty Rainforest, but trying to get the Springheart Nantuko with as many triggers as possible. Opponent only has 1 card in hand. Alright, so the Nadu pings first. If this pings a land, then we just float the mana, protect our Nadu, source power shares of our very own. Another Noble Hierarch. So we've got some mana floating. So let's play this one out. And if we're just sacrificing this anyway, it doesn't really matter. Actually, we get to make a forest and do it that way, don't we? And that's probably better for us. I think we attack with... So we can just play this guy as well. Just have another blocker. Do I care about anything here? We can put our own stuff back into our library, that's fine. So if we go to combat with this Keen-Eye Curator, we might be able to blow them out with a plow here. I'm just going to take the 9. Let's crack this. Go and get a Savannah. Take out this Guide of Souls. Like, we're in a pretty reasonable spot here. Our opponent's got no cards. Well, they got 1 card in hand. They can try and bounce our Nadu. That obviously doesn't go amazingly for them because we can protect it. The Quirion Ranger can give us that extra shove of mana alongside all these mana dorks. If we find a Chord of Calling, it's just absolutely lights out for our opponent. If we find a Nomads, obviously lights out as well. And even so, we're crashing in for huge amounts of damage, and our opponent's had enough. So we are cruising with 3-0 so far. Let's go to the 4th round and see if we can keep the win streak going. This opening hand is quite mana heavy, but it will get us where we need to go. We have A plus B. And we've also got an additional A to go with our B if we need. So this seems fine. We haven't had anyone take us apart properly yet. So it feels like we're about due for that. Volcanic Island, we're going to have some good old-fashioned Grixis tempo. How much do I care about being wastelanded? I don't really want to get wastelanded. So I think that's better than... Yeah, I think we just get the forest rather than saving this. Get our little herder. Do you want to counter a 1-mana 1-1? No, you do not. They could have Bowmasters in their deck if they're Grixis tempo, but usually they don't have a lot of space for Bowmasters because they've got like their 8 1-drops and they've got frogs and maybe Murktides, and that's all the threats they really need. I think we're going to see a Psychic Frog this turn. Oh no, a Lightning Bolt. Targeting our herder. Alright, that saves us a little bit of damage. And our opponent's not playing a frog this turn, which is excellent news for us. Because that's the way that this game really snowballs out of control. And a Ponder. So it's going to be 3 types, possibly 4 if they flip the right thing off the channeler. They put 1 card on top. So I think next turn we're playing Nomads and Core around Days. And the turn after that means we can draw into a Nadu and just try and go if we want to. And then we can just rebuy with the Chord and the Green Sun Zenith as we end up with more mana afterwards. Yep, so in comes a channeler. Opponent's got 3 cards. They're about to draw a 4th off of this bauble. Let's see what we draw for turn and if it changes how we want to approach this turn. A Birds of Paradise. I think we want to play the Nomads around the Days and then the Birds into Days. Because this just has us absolutely locked and loaded, ready to go next turn. This also gives us something that we can protect the Nomads with because we can ping the damage onto the Birds. Wasteland. So now we can't cast the Green Sun Zenith for Nadu. We can just draw a Nadu. It happens. Lightning Bolt. Where would you like to target? The Birds of Paradise. Not giving me the choice to redirect damage is interesting. This does mean that they get another turn without us comboing them though, so I can understand why they would take that line. They're just going for the mana denial strategy. Makes sense, they've had the Wasteland. Right, in comes the Channeler. We get a 13. A Springheart Nantuko. That's a pretty good one. Are we playing that into a Daze or are we getting a Mana Dork? Kind of want to get a Mana Dork here. No Daze. Okay, what Mana Dork is best? Probably a Birds of Paradise because we can block with it in an emergency. We could get a Noble Hierarch and squeeze in for 2, but I don't think this game is about nickel and diming our opponent for 2 damage. Get this Birds. We're going to have for 1 mana. Nothing that would be any different. Like anything they have for 1 mana that interacts our Nomads would also interact with us if we don't attack. They're not playing 1 mana flash creatures. So next turn we can Springheart Nantuko on the Birds and start making more Birds. Which isn't a terrible way to go. Our opponent's got something over there. Let's see how bad it is for us. There is the Murktide, which is why we got the Birds. Chord of Calling. Can this do anything exciting for us? We play this. That's 1, 2, 3 mana, 4, 5. So we can get a 2-drop from our deck. There's not really any 2-drops I want here. We could play the Springheart Nantuko, play a land, then we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 bodies, so we could chord for 1 to get another Birds to survive another turn, to then try and chord again. I don't hate that. I think that is better than bestowing this. It's kind of the same thing either way, right? Except our Birds have to tap. Right, I think we're just going to cast this. I'm going to play this out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can chord for 2. So we can block and then chord for a Birds. and try and chord for Nadu next turn. Because we're dead to Lightning Bolt if we don't block here. So I think we are in Block Town. So block here. We could just get the Allosaurus Shepherd here. But then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that does work and gives us an uncountable way of doing... Okay, I'm going to go for the Shepherd and going for the win next turn, I think. Our opponent could have removal and all sorts here. Another Nomads. Don't have any white mana for this though. So green, green, green. 1, 2, 3. Alright, we get the Nadu and we get to do our thing now. What a silly thing it is. So if our opponent has any interaction, we can then interact over the top of it. So we're going to be drawing at least 10 cards this turn. Dismember. They're surveilling, they're targeting the Nadu. And our Springheart's going to pop off. So move this out of the way so we can continue our clicking frenzy. Tap for mana now in case we find another Cradle. Keep drawing some cards here. There is a possibility that we don't do enough here. But we'll see. Alright, we're just going to keep clicking and see how this goes. This is all with this Dismember still on the stack as well. We're just looking for like another Chord or something like that. More lands over there. Now found another Nadu. Alright, our opponent's scooping it up. They've seen enough because they know we can just go and play this other Nadu. We just keep going and eventually win. We're uncounterable. Yeah, our deck is really silly, isn't it? Keen-Eye Curator is okay for the fair games, as are the Endurances. Our opponent probably has some number of Grafdigger's Cage, but that number is usually 1. And I don't think it's worth trying to like bring in Force of Vigor just for the 1 of. Source of Plowshare is obviously very good too. So we've got a nice bulk of 7 cards that are decent. Collector Ouphe obviously going out. It's been going out an awful lot. And that's not a surprise. Get rid of the Birchlore. I think we want to keep the Herder in here because this game can end up quite grindy. We might want to be activating it. We're not getting rid of any of these sorts of things. It does become very difficult to know what we're getting rid of at this stage. Like, we're just doing some trimmings. I don't really want to trim any of the mana dorks. Quirion Ranger is kind of like a mana dork. But again, I don't think we can trim that. We need to keep the Shepherds in because our opponent's going to be trying to jam us up with counter magic. Are we getting rid of some of our tutors? We could get rid of a Green Sun Zenith to hedge against the Grafdigger's Cage as an option. Not in love with that, but I think that's acceptable to trim on one of those. Maybe we do have to trim on some more mana dorks here. Quirion Ranger is very good to play around low lands. Maybe I will take out the Herder still. We'll try and work like this. We've still got a lot of mana dorks in here. Like, if we're getting wastelanded, the Ranger can actually protect us a little bit. The mana in his hand doesn't work, but it's pretty. Let's mulligan. The mana doesn't work again. Alright, so we can keep this one. So we've got a basic land. We've got a land that will cast to Plowshares. And then we have some creatures. So 2 of these cards have got to go. I guess it's a Trop. And probably the Safekeeper. I don't want to be sacrificing lands that are already lower on resources. We can play a pretty fair game plan with what we've got here. Don't see a lot of sweepers in the old Delver decks these days. But I think it is now a good time to be playing Rough and Tumble in Delver again. Because all these Ocelot Pride decks are kicking around as well. And lots of Cradle Control, Nadu type stuff. So, get your Rough and Tumbles. Do I want to play a Noble Hierarch into a pretty obvious Lightning Bolt? I don't think I do. We need to make sure our resources actually get leveraged in some way. So if we can stop our opponent from doing anything on their turn 2 or whatever because they want to Lightning Bolt our creature, then that's a good state to be in. You see the frog? Is it frog time? I think if our opponent has a frog here, they are relatively favoured. Alright, so there's the Grafdigger's Cage I mentioned. We do have a Boseiju that can clean this up, but we don't really need to do that right now. There is some Lightning Bolt shenanigans over there, perhaps. Am I okay with losing this Hierarch? I think so. I imagine this is just getting Lightning Bolted straight up. There it goes, sure. But that means our Nomads isn't getting Lightning Bolt, and we kind of have to work through that at some point. And having a Springheart Nantuko do its thing is quite nice as well. A Wasteland. A Psychic Frog. Alright, so we're going to plough this around days. Let's go and get ourselves a Savannah. Like, we could try and max value out of the Springheart and do stuff there, but I think it's more important to actually get our spells to work here. Are we doing this now? I don't think our opponent's got Force of Negation in against our creature combo deck, so I'm not going to play around that. We're going to play around our opponent being able to untap and do stuff. Do we get 2 for 1 here? Off of a Force? or not. Alright. We can just kind of ignore that now. We can't fetch a Dryad Arbor whilst the Grafdigger's Cage is in play. That's a really important thing to note. Another Psychic Frog. Yep, it's pretty tasty. Still keeping this wasteland in check. They're trying to use it to destroy a Cradle. That's the impression I'm getting. Which is a perfectly fine way to use it. We don't have any Surveil lands that we can reach for with this Verdant Catacombs. You want untapped lands in this deck, so they come in untapped off the Nadu. That's fine by me. Let's see what we draw, and then we can decide what we're doing with our Boseiju and Springheart Nantuko. A Birds of Paradise. I do not hate having a Birds of Paradise. This is a reasonable thing to put a Springheart Nantuko on. I think we just hold for now. They are going to get a card off of this Psychic Frog. But next turn we can put Springheart Nantuko on a Birds of Paradise and immediately make a copy of Birds of Paradise. Or not. We can just have our creature die. That's also a thing that can happen. Our opponent's going to cruise through for 1 damage here. They're going to get themselves a extra card. And then the game is just going to slowly slip away from us because Psychic Frog is pretty darn good. Here's a Delver. An Allosaurus Shepherd. Let's deploy the Shepherd here. Do I want to put a Springheart Nantuko on this? Do I want to save this Boseiju to get rid of the cage? Because at the moment we don't have any of our tutor effects. But if we draw one, we're definitely going to want to get rid of this cage. It's now the ideal opportunity to get the Springheart Nantuko down on this guy and make the rest of our draws better unless they have some of our 7 tutors. I think I'm going for playing the Nomads out here. I think we have to be Savannah is the only option that works here. Let's try and put the fear into our opponent. This can be countered, unlike the Allosaurus Shepherd. Am I playing out this Boseiju? No. We want to be able to blow up this cage if we need to. We can protect our Nomads by pushing the damage onto the Allosaurus Shepherd if they use direct damage removal like Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat. We have seen Dismember from our opponents already. Force of Will has entered our opponent's hand. Not very good with the Allosaurus Shepherd around. Are you going to remove some cards from your graveyard to attack with the frog? Nope, because they do not need to do that. Because we're not blocking here. They discarded a second Grafdigger's Cage. Good to know they've got multiples in there. Big Murktide Regent. Sure. That's quite large. They can kill us next turn. Dryad Arbor, do you do anything? Question I often find myself asking. So we want to cast this with Bestow, I guess. I think our opponent just has us dead here. There's not really much we get to do about it. And like a Nomads, I suppose we can have a Nomads. So the 2 cards that are now in our opponent's hand are because of the Psychic Frog they had. And that's where it's been connecting. Alright, so if our opponent wants to go for it, they can, and they can kill us. But let's see if that's the thing they want to do. Have they got Surveil land here? No. So all they can do is discard 2 cards to the frog, jump the frog, and then that's 4 plus 5 is 9, 10, 11, 12. Exactly lethal. And it might be even more than that if they're discarding instants and sorceries. Alright. They're going to discard 1 more card. They're going to jump their guy. They're going to turn them all sideways. We're going to go to game 3. In come the clowns. In comes the concede button. I'm pretty happy with how we sideboarded, to be honest. I'm kind of tempted to try and have some more mana dorks, though. Maybe we like trim one of these for another Hierarch. Something along these lines. Just go a bit easier on the tutor effects when our opponent's going to be digging for certain things. I don't like this hand. I think we want to mulligan this one. Where is our forest? We're going to mulligan our way out of this game. Right, we'll keep this. We'll get rid of this Oracle. And what's the other card that goes here? Probably the Safekeeper. Is this basic forest? It might have to be. Because if we get wastelanded off, that's just lights out. So the other option is get a non-basic forest, but play the Quirion Ranger. But then if our opponent Force of Wills that, untaps and wastelands us, then it's game over. Are we going to see a threat? Are we going to see a cantrip? Or are we going to see a removal spell? It's one of the 3. I think ideally they want to get removal want to get threats down first. And then when you're removing stuff, you're actually advancing your win instead of just removing and then trying to play your threats later. Sylvan Safekeeper, I remember you. Which one of these are we playing around a daze? Probably the one that gives us more mana. Because then we can technically play both around a daze. So we can Chord of Calling for 1 in response to our opponent playing a Grafdigger's Cage here. because we can untap on our Noble Hierarch, and that gives us a Chord of Calling for 1. So we can go and get a Nomads and work towards something along the lines of Nadu combo, which is very much what we're trying to do here. Wasteland goes away off their Surveil. We've got Brainstorm as well. It's getting all the selection, but they're not playing a Frog, which is the main thing, because the Frog allows them to chip away our life total and just accrue more resources at the same time, and they just beat us on 2 axes there. Feels like they're looking for a specific card, probably the Grafdigger's Cage would be my guess. We have 2 elves. We could always go and Chord of Calling for Allosaurus Shepherd, and then a draw of Cradle means all of a sudden we're cracking our opponent for 15 plus. Right. Our opponent's finished with their Brainstorm. They've shuffled it away. We're going to see another spell to try and flip this channeler. Lightning Bolt. What are you targeting here? The Sylvan Safekeeper. Do I want to sacrifice that? I don't think I do. Do I want to do a Chord of Calling right now? It's the same if I do it now as next turn, except next turn I'll have more mana available. Okay. I think we have to let the Safekeeper go here. We know our opponent isn't playing a cage. I don't think we can sacrifice our lands given our current predicament. So they managed to find everything to get their channeler to flip, because they've milled over a Murktide as well. That's what we draw. A Wooded Foothills. Do not hate that one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. We can go and get a Keen-Eyed thingy-majig and try and block with it. I think I want to fetch around a Stifle here. I think we're better off getting a Trop. We can do a Trop. We can do a Keen-Eyed guy around a Daze, or we can do an Endurance into a Daze. I think we're best off trying to get the Raccoon going. So they daze this, we can untap one of our guys. So they might walk into a daze here. They did not. So this will get us our little friend here. We can shrink this guy and then block it. So if we get rid of this Murktide Regent, that's probably the hardest one for them to put in. It's either that or the Mishra's Bauble. I think we take the Regent here. Gonna drop this channeler down. If they have... Oh, wow. They just conceded the whole match to the Keen-Eyed Curator. Love this card. Because not only does this keep this in check, we get to take their only threat out, and then we end up with a 7-7 next turn. And that's just going to be absolute game over for our opponent. They can't remove it straight away. Yeah, this card is much better than Scavenging Ooze in my opinion, and I think we've showcased that. Alright, 4 rounds in. We are 4-0. So we are playing for the trophy with this busted Nadu deck. Let's see if we can put it on the board. Alright, we're into the trophy round. We're on the play. We do have a Quirion Ranger, which is very good for jumping up the curve mana-wise. I think we are going to keep this one. We just need to draw mana. It does get a little bit awkward with what we're doing with this Verdant Catacombs. Do we get a Savannah? Do we get a Trop? Do we just get the basic forest? If we play this... If we go and get a Trop and play the Quirion Ranger, we're kind of safe there. If you get Savannah and get the Quirion Ranger, we're relying on the Noble Hierarch to cast our Nadu, which I think isn't where we want to be. So I'm going to go do this. And I'm going to play the Quirion Ranger, and we can use this to protect our land if necessary. Feels like it's about time we just got rolled by a combo deck, but we'll see. Love to draw a land. If we don't, we can still do Quirion Ranger stuff anyway. Right, we did not draw the land there. So by doing this, we play around days. I'll play out this Sylvan Safekeeper that I don't really care about killing, but our opponent is quite likely to remove the Sylvan Safekeeper rather than any of our other creatures. Undercity Sewers. Right, we're probably on some sort of like bug beanstalk deck here. A daze. Sure, I don't mind. We got the Hierarch in, which is the important one. Bash for 2. Get that damage churning. Would love to draw land. Undercity Sewers again, so they're not removing any of our creatures this turn cycle, but they might have more counter magic. Brazen Borrower to the graveyard. We can play a Nadu this turn if we want to. Ooh, how does Chord of Calling change things? I think I want to play a Nomads. So this is 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana. So we tap this for 1 and bounce it. Then we play it again. That's 2 mana. So that's 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. So we can chord for 2. That doesn't seem the most useful. Alternatively, 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, we try the Nadu. This can run into a daze again, but then it sets our opponent back. Alright, they're just scooping it up straight away. Turn 3, Nadu. Oh, our deck is very silly, isn't it? The bug deck might care about Harbinger of the Seas. We haven't seen enough of our opponent's deck to know. But the fact that we saw Tropical Island makes me think we're looking at Bug Beans or something of that sort of ilk. So I don't think Force of Vigor is entirely out of the question. But what we probably do need is Swords to Plowshares for Psychic Frog. Collector Ouphe is gone once again. I don't think we need the Birchlore here. And I don't like the Herder that much. That gives us another 2 slots to find. And we've been trimming from this pile a lot. So I guess... Sorry, it is just 1 slot to find, isn't it? We've been trimming from this pile a lot. And I think that's an acceptable thing to do. I think I'll trim 1 Quirion Ranger here. I do still like having the Endurance here. We can maybe put more in if we need them. But let's just submit and see how we fare. Okay, we just need a little bit of mana of the right colour here. I'm willing to keep this one, even though quite a chunk of our hand is inaccessible. But we're on the draw, and what we're doing is so powerful that we can afford to play these little bits and pieces out and see where we end up. We have a Boseiju which can hit a Beanstalk, if that's what our opponent is up to. A Birds of Paradise. I would very much like to have this Birds of Paradise. Is into a Daze. We'll see if our opponent wants to take that. They do not. So they might have things like Fatal Push, they can just point at it anyway. But if we untap with this Birds, we're in a far better position. Right, a Ponder before our opponent does anything else makes a lot of sense. They did not shuffle off their previous Ponder, but they shuffled off of this one. Wasteland. Alrighty, that's pretty good for us. I have to imagine our opponent has some interaction with what we're trying to accomplish here. So, what is the deal? I think we go Nomads. Then we play Ranger. They would like to daze that, sure. They are sat there with a Wasteland, so I'm going to play this Boseiju out and use this to play the Sylvan Safekeeper. So if we got the Quirion Ranger down, we could use that to play around the Wasteland. Oh, wow, they want to Force of Will this. So our opponent is telling us that they are going to interact with us using removal spells. So that's the information that we can take from that. There's that Tropical Island again, 4 cards in hand. They pitched a Tamiyo and they've got a Tamiyo here. But they don't have any removal spells up unless it's Dismember. They're just hitting this. So we can play a Nadu into Daze here. Or we could play the Quirion Ranger and delay a turn. I think I would like to get this Ranger and delay a turn. I think this is worth ploughing now. Get that 1 damage in. Right, they've got black mana now. So they can try and kill our Nomads. Swords to Plowshares isn't a terrible one to have, is it? Let's go for this Nadu. It's a round of days because of the Ranger. They might just try and kill our Nomads in response, which only gives us 1 activation per turn cycle. Okay, we're going to untap our Birds by returning this Trop. We've got another Nadu if we want it. And we'll play out this land. So we bounce the next turn. Get our little bits in. We've got a Plough available. We can then start doing Nadu stuff. Yeah, we feel very far ahead here. My normal approach to playing against these Nadu decks is to try and ignore a lot of the little stuff and just go for like the Nadu or the stuff that goes with Nadu. So float a white mana, float a green mana. We will return a forest to untap this Birds of Paradise. An Orcish Bowmasters. Sure. They're going to ping down our other Birds of Paradise here. So then we get another trigger here and a Green Sun Zenith. Do we want to hit this? Alright, our opponent's had enough because we're just going to start doing the stuff with the guy. So that was a pretty easy trophy, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Yeah, so let's a quick look at the matches. So 2-0, 2-1, 2-0, 2-0, 2-1. So we only dropped 2 games in the entire league, which is pretty good, obviously. This deck feels legitimately quite busted. We all know how strong Nadu is. It's clearly too strong for Modern. It completely ruined the entire of the format pretty much immediately as soon as it came along. And I'm not saying it's going to ruin Legacy, but when the Modern Horizons set came out and I played with it a tiny bit, the cards that I thought would probably get banned would be Psychic Frog and Nadu were my top 2 that would get banned. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Nadu get increasingly more problematic for the format. But one thing that Nadu does do that is really irritating is the amount of clicking, right? That's one of the things that made it a joke in Modern, or so I'm told, because I don't really follow that format in a big way, just enough to know that this was a problem, was that everyone was just sick of playing against it because the play experience is horrible. A bit like when you had people who were slow playing Sensei's Divine Top, where you put like 5 triggers on the stack, resolve each trigger, respond to the trigger, and just kind of go off. And that's a horrible play pattern to play, especially in paper. So I wouldn't be surprised if this got a chop later on for either a reason of power level or just being irritating. But while we've got it, it was an absolute blast to play with. I think This particular configuration felt great. Like, we had a little bit of wiggle room in terms of like the Birchlore Rangers and the Elvish Herder. Both of these, we didn't really use either of them. There was one game where I thought maybe I would want the Herder, but we'd already bought it out. And even then it didn't matter. So I'm not really convinced these cards are particularly essential, but I understand why they're in the deck. I think the Collector Ouphe, you could swap this out for the main deck Keen-Eyed Curator. That could be another thing you do to try and get through whatever your opponent's doing. I understand having the Collector Ouphe because a lot of the combo decks that are going to race us tend to use artifact stuff, whether that's Karnforge or the Epic Storm, you know, Saga Storm, that sort of thing. So being able to go turn 1 Dork, turn 2 Green Sun for Collector Ouphe is going to be more impactful than turn 1 Bird, turn 2 go and get Keen-Eyed Curator, turn 3 start activating it. So I understand why this is the choice of Hate Bear, and we do still have the Endurance anyway. But depending on your format and your meta in your area you're playing, you may not need the Collector Ouphe, but I think having it for online leagues makes sense, even though we bought it out every single round today. We can have a little bit of dead air in our deck because there's just so much gas. Does this feel better than the Living Wish build to me? I think the mana is better. I'll go as far as to say the mana is definitely better. Do I think the overall deck is better? Like, Chord of Calling is really interesting. It does mean that you get a lot more splash hate from the Green Sun Zenith, the Grafdigger's Cage, because of your Green Sun Zenith and your Chord of Calling. You can have 8 cards in your deck just blanked by 1 card, whereas something like Living Wish ignores that a little bit, and it also lets you play more niche things that are more powerful in your sideboard, right? So you can have things that you wouldn't really want to have in your main deck, but then you can just have them as a thing to draw if you need them. So I do quite like the Living Wish there. What Chord of Calling does that is different, though, is this is instant speed. So if we're going off in our opponent's turn with Nomads and Nadu, we can go and get the Chord of Calling to go and find us whatever we need. Now, the thing with that is a bit like having your diamond shoes too tight at that point, right? Because you're already going off with Nadu and Nomads. You don't really need the Chord of Calling to really take it up a notch. Another issue I have with the Chord of Calling is that it requires you to play more creatures, like more creatures out, which then means you're more exposed to sweepers. Now, people should be playing a lot more sweepers than they are in the meta right now. I said earlier that Delver decks should be playing Rough and Tumble again. Your Frog can dodge that quite nicely, but it's going to sweep through Ocelots, it's going to sweep through Cradle Control, it's going to sweep through Nadu decks. And it's going to make these Chord of Callings harder to cast, whereas Living Wish is something that you can pretty much always just cast, and you're also not going to get blown out by Opposition Agents and Grafdigger's Cage. So I think it's kind of similar. I would like to try and play a Bant version like this with the Living Wish rather than the build we played that it was 4 color. I think maybe you can just reduce it to having just the 3 colors. That build also just had the Thassa's Oracle in the sideboard instead of in the main deck, so we actually had more good spells in the main deck because we could just go Living Wish when we needed to get the win condition. So I don't think it's entirely solved, which is the best version of this deck, but I think that when we played the Living Wish build, the only round we dropped was when basically our deck just collapsed on us and we just couldn't draw lands or whatever it was. We basically got super unlucky with the one we lost, and then this one we obviously got trophy. I think Nadu is one of the best things you can do in Legacy right now. I think it might be, I think you're looking at some sort of Psychic Frog deck, Eldrazi and Nadu is like probably the 3 best things you can do in Legacy at the moment. Obviously, people are testing new things out and we might see that change. But this Nadu card feels like it's able to compete with whatever. Because our opponent could be quite far ahead, then we just go, okay, we have this, you lose. It's an A plus B combo that is very easy to assemble. It's quite resilient because you're playing a bunch of stuff that also targets your Nadu. So you got multiple A's plus B's. And your A's and B's aren't that bad. Like Nomads is like the worst card in the deck outside of the Oracle probably. Because Nomads doesn't really do very much on its own. But like, you know, Quirion Ranger, this goes with Nadu, helps you a little bit out, but also it just jumps you in mana, it protects you from Wasteland. Elvish Herder is obviously not great either, but other than that, you know, we're just playing things that are fine to have. So this deck feels really solid. Springheart Nantuko is a pretty ridiculous card as well. I think people have definitely warmed up to this one. At first, you know, we saw it just with like Nadu stuff, and then Cradle Control started playing. Now I've seen a few other decks playing it as well. I think this is going to be an absolute staple in green decks moving forward. It does feel very potent. But yeah, not much more to say about this deck other than it's clearly very strong. It's one of the best things you can be doing in Legacy, in my opinion, and I still don't think we've even found the best version of this deck yet, which says quite a lot. Since I think like I said, I'm 9-1 with Nadu decks on channel with like 0 practice on them, 2 different builds. Both of them I think could do with a little bit of fine tuning, and the only round we lost so far is when we got a little bit unfortunate. And we did play against Psychic Frog decks. We played against a big spectrum of stuff that people are running in the meta right now. It's not like we were just playing against everyone's pet decks today. So yeah, big big thumbs up if you want to do Nadu. How long are you going to be able to do Nadu things for in Legacy? I'm unsure. I wouldn't be surprised to see it getting banned just because of how sort of mind-numbing it is to play when you're doing it in paper especially. You need to put like 30-odd triggers on the stack and respond to your own triggers and do all that sort of thing. So it's not great in terms of like tournament play. They banned Sensei Divining Top for similar reasons. They banned Second Sunrise, like the Eggs deck, in Modern for similar reasons in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Whether or not it needs banning for power level reasons, I don't know, but it feels very strong. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. Please remember to like and subscribe. I don't put that I've got a trophy in my thumbnails and stuff when I record, because I want you all to have a really fun experience not knowing what the outcome's going to be. But it does mean I suffer a little bit because I don't get the people who just want to view all the trophy matches. So if you want to share this with friends, that does help me out here. And I'm just trying to give you lovely people out there the best viewing experience possible. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.